My daughter texted me 3 weeks before her wedding. The wedding I was paying $40,000 for. "You can come if you still pay," she wrote, "but don't expect a seat up front." I read it twice. Then I typed back 6 words that I meant with my whole heart. "Then I'll keep the $40,000 and you can keep the seat." She called me in tears exactly 1 hour later, but by then, it was too late. Because the second I hit send, I didn't sit there and cry. I picked up the phone and I called my lawyer, and my lawyer had already made her calls to the venue, to the caterer, to the planner, before my daughter ever dialed my number. By the time Bryn was sobbing into the phone asking what I'd done, the $40,000 was already on its way back to me, and the grand wedding they'd planned without me had quietly, completely come apart. Here's how a woman they called just the cleaning lady took back $40,000 and her dignity in the same afternoon. Welcome back to Alpha Mom Stories, where the woman they treat like the help is usually the one holding the contract. Stay with me to the end, drop a comment, and be sure to subscribe. My name is Cora Thorne. I'm 64 years old, and I built everything I have with these 2 hands and a bucket. I started cleaning offices at night when Bryn was 4 and her father had just decided that fatherhood wasn't for him. 1 mop, 1 rusted station wagon, 1 client, a dentist's office on Route 9 that paid me $60 a week to make it shine. I cleaned that office on my hands and knees with my baby asleep in a playpen in the waiting room, and I did such a good job, the dentist told his friends. 35 years later, Thorne Commercial Cleaning has 60 employees, a fleet of vans, and contracts with half the office parks in the county. I pay for health insurance. I gave a lot of single mothers their first steady paycheck. I'm proud of it the way you're only proud of a thing that costs wringing out mops and gripping a steering wheel before dawn. I used to be embarrassed by them. I'm not anymore. They're the truest thing about me. People see a woman with hands like mine and they decide they know the whole story. Cleaning lady. Salt of the earth, bless her. Not someone you'd seat up front. My future in-laws decided that about me the day they met me. My own daughter, I'm sorry to say, eventually decided it too. They all forgot one thing. A woman who built a company from 1 bucket reads a contract very, very carefully before she signs it. Let me tell you about the wedding. Bryn is my only child, and I raised her alone, and I would walk into traffic for her. I need you to know that before I tell you the rest, because the rest is going to make you angry at her, and I don't want you angrier at her than I am. I gave that girl everything. Not money at first. There wasn't any. I gave her the other things. I never missed a recital, even if I came straight from a job in my work clothes and sat in the back smelling like industrial cleaner. I paid her way through college $100 at a time. I told her every single day that she could be anything. She became a marketing manager, smart, polished, ambitious, and a little ashamed, I think, of where she came from, the way kids sometimes are when they climb. She started saying, "My mom's in facilities management," instead of "My mom cleans offices." I let it slide. Pride is a complicated thing in a child who watched her mother scrub toilets to feed her. Then she met Preston Whitfield. The Whitfields are old money, or the memory of it anyway, which I'd learn matters. Big name in this county for 3 generations. A grandfather who'd owned mills, a family that summered places and knew people and wore their last name like a crown. Bryn fell in love with Preston, and I think a little bit with the never have to count pennies the way we had. I offered to pay for the wedding before anyone asked. $40,000, every cent of it earned on my knees. It was the proudest check I ever planned to write. I met Vivian Whitfield, Preston's mother, at a dinner to celebrate the engagement. I wore my good dress. I brought flowers. I was determined to be liked. Vivian looked at me the way you'd look at a coat you'd decided not to buy. "Cora," she said, taking my rough hand in her smooth one for exactly as long as politeness required. "Preston tells us you're in cleaning?" She said the word the way you'd say a mild illness. "How industrious." 35 years, I said. "Built it myself." "How nice that there's such steady demand for that sort of thing," she said, and turned to talk to someone who mattered. That was the whole relationship right there in the first 90 seconds. To Vivian, I was the help who'd somehow gotten above herself. a woman who scrubbed floors for a living, presuming to be family. Here's the thing I'd learn about the Whitfields, slowly, over the months that followed. Their money was mostly gone. The mills had closed decades ago. What they had left was the name, the house that needed a new roof they kept putting off, and a ferocious, bottomless need to be seen as people who still mattered. Old money with empty pockets is the proudest and most dangerous kind, because it has nothing left to protect but the appearance of having something. And here came Cora Thorne, a cleaning lady with an actual checkbook, offering to fund the wedding that would let the Whitfields throw the kind of party that proved they were still somebody. They wanted my money very much. They just couldn't stand the idea of me sitting at the good table while they spent it. I didn't understand that yet. I was still trying to be liked. Now, here's the part that matters most, and it's the part nobody saw coming. Never in my life handed anyone a blank check, and I wasn't about to start with people who looked at me like Vivian did. I did it the way I do everything in my business. I became the customer. Every vendor. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the band, I signed the contracts myself. Cora Thorne, responsible party. I paid the deposits from my company account. I negotiated the terms. And because 35 years of business has taught me that a contract is the only promise that holds up when people stop being nice, I had my lawyer, Sandra Pham, read every single one before I signed. Sandra's the woman who's kept my company out of trouble for 20 years. She read the venue contract and she circled something with her red pen and she said, "Cora, you're the sole responsible party on all of these. And look at the cancellation terms. You're more than 90 days out. If you ever pulled the plug, you'd get most of these deposits back, and nobody else has the authority to spend a dime of this but you." "Why would I pull the plug?" I said. "It's my daughter's wedding." "No reason," Sandra said, capping her pen. "Just know that you can. Always good to know where the door is." I put all the contracts in an accordion folder, the green one I use for important things, and I filed it away, and I forgot about Sandra's words. I'd remember them 3 weeks before the wedding, at 11 o'clock at night, holding my phone. The takeover happened the way these things always do, slowly and then all at once, and always framed as help. Vivian just had some thoughts about the venue, then about the flowers, then about the guest list, which swelled with Whitfield cousins and Gerald's business contacts, until my side, my sisters, my employees, the people who'd actually held us up for 30 years, was squeezed down to a handful of seats. It's just that we know so many people. Vivian's paper, it described Bryn as marrying into the prominent Whitfield family and mentioned that the Whitfields will host with my $40,000. I'd call Bryn to ask about a detail, the cake, the colors, and she'd say, gently, "Oh, Vivian already handled that, Mom. She has such a good eye for this stuff." A good eye with my money. I kept telling myself it didn't matter. Let Vivian have her crests and her expectations. The point was, Bryn, happy, marrying a man she loved. If being elbowed to the side was the price of my daughter's joy, I'd pay it the way I'd paid every other price in my life, quietly on my knees without complaint. That's what I told myself. What I didn't see was that there's a difference between stepping back so your child can shine and being slowly erased from your child's life by people who want your wallet and not your face. I was about to learn the difference in a printed seating chart. The hardest part wasn't Vivian. I could see Vivian coming a mile off. The hardest part was watching Bryn change. My girl started talking like them, started caring about things she'd never cared about. The right handbag, the right zip code, whether something was done. She got quieter around me, or maybe just busier. In that way, that means the same thing. The Sunday calls got shorter. When I'd mention coming to a planning meeting, there'd be a little pause before she said it probably wasn't necessary. Vivian had it covered. I understood it, even as it broke my heart. Bryn had spent her childhood watching her mother be looked down on. She'd smelled the cleaning chemicals on me at her recitals. She'd seen the other parents' faces. And now here was a whole gleaming family offering to fold her into a world where nobody would ever look down on her again. it, a little at a time, the way you choose anything bad, one easy, understandable step at a time. I want to be fair to her because I love her and because the end of this story depends on you believing she had a good heart underneath it all. She wasn't cruel by nature. She was a girl who'd been poor and was terrified of being poor again, marrying into a family that traded belonging for loyalty. They were teaching her that I was the price of admission. I kept thinking she'd snap out of it, that she'd remember who'd sat in the back in her work clothes for 18 years of recitals. She would, eventually, but first she'd send the text. The seating chart became the battle nobody told me we were having. A wedding seating chart is a small thing and an enormous thing. It's a map of who matters, who's near the couple, who's at the back by the kitchen. At a wedding, the front row is for the people who made you. The parents, the grandparents, the ones whose whole lives bent around getting you to that altar. I assumed, without ever once thinking about it, that I'd be in the front row. Where else would the mother of the bride be? I'd paid for the room. I'd raised the bride. I'd earned that seat over 28 years and $40,000. But the Whitfields had a different map. In their map, the front rows were for Whitfields and the people the Whitfields wanted to impress. Gerald's banker, a state senator they were friendly with, cousins with the right names. The front of the room was real estate, and real estate, to people clinging to a fading name, is everything. There simply wasn't room up front in their minds for a cleaning lady, even one who was paying for the whole thing. I didn't know this was being discussed. I found out the way you always find out these things. By accident, in writing, in a way that couldn't be taken back. It was a Tuesday night. Before I tell you about the chart, you should know it didn't come out of nowhere. There'd been 100 small cuts before the big one. At the engagement dinner, there'd been a slideshow of the happy couple, full of Whitfield family photos going back generations, and not one picture of me. Not one. 18 years of single motherhood, and I wasn't in the story they were telling about where Bryn came from. When Vivian introduced me to her friends, it was always the same. This is Cora, Bryn's mother. She's in facilities. A little laugh. Self-made, apparently. Said like a charming defect. At the dress fitting, which I paid for, I was asked to wait in the lobby while Vivian and Bryn and the bridesmaids did the important part. I sat in that lobby for 2 hours with a magazine. The woman who'd bought the dress parked like a chauffeur. Each time, I swallowed it. Each time, I told myself the same thing. It's not about you, Cora. It's Bryn's day. Don't make it about you. That's the trap, by the way. The trap that catches every decent parent. They count on your love to make you swallow your own erasure. They count on you being too good a mother to make a scene. Your decency becomes the leash they walk you on. I'd been on that leash for 8 months, telling myself it was love. And then the seating chart landed in my phone, accidentally, and I saw it in black and white. Not a feeling I could talk myself out of, but a fact, printed, with my name on it. Row 6, behind the Whitfield cousins, behind Gerald's banker, behind a state senator I'd never met. At my own daughter's wedding, that I was paying $40,000 for. Row 6. I called Bryn about it, calmly. I want you to know I tried the calm, reasonable, mother-to-daughter way first. Sweetheart, I said, I just saw the seating chart. I think there's a careful, rehearsed. So the thing is, the front rows are kind of spoken for. Vivian's family is really big, and there are some important people coming on Preston's side, and Bryn, I'm the mother of the bride. I know. It's just, Vivian feels really strongly that the front should reflect, the families standing in the community and the families standing, I repeated. And then Bryn said the thing I think she'd been coached to say, because it wasn't her voice in it, it was Vivian's. Mom, it's honestly not a big deal where you sit. You'll still be there. Vivian said, she said you should just handle the check and let the people who understand this kind of event handle the details that matter. Just handle the check. Let the people who matter handle what matters. There it was. The whole thing, said out loud in my daughter's mouth, in my future in-law's words. I was not a mother. I was a funding source. A checkbook they'd tolerate in row 6 as long as the check cleared. I didn't yell. I've never been a yeller. You don't survive what I survived by yelling. I just said, I see. Let me think about it, Bryn. And I hung up, and I sat in my quiet house with my rough hands in my lap. I should have known then what I was going to do, but I gave them one more chance. God help me, I always give one more chance. I told Lupe about it the next morning. Lupe's been with me 22 years. Started as a part-time floor tech, runs 3 of my crews now, and tells me the truth whether I want it or not, which is what a real friend is for. We were in the break room at the warehouse, both of us with coffee, and I told her about row 6 and just handle the check. And Lupe set her cup down hard. Cora, she said, listen to yourself. You're paying $40,000 to be told to sit in the back and keep your mouth shut. It's Bryn's day, I started. It's your money, Lupe said, and it's your daughter, and they are teaching houses till her back gave out. If anybody put her in row 6 at my wedding, paid for or not, I'd have walked that woman to the front myself and let the snobs sit in the parking lot. I didn't say anything. You always do this, Lupe said softer. You think being a good mother means disappearing. It doesn't. Sometimes being a good mother means showing your kid what a person with self-respect looks like. She's never going to learn it from those people. She can only learn it from you. I drove home that night turning it over. Lupe was right, and I knew she was right, and I still wasn't sure I had it in me to do anything but swallow it one more time. Then, at 11 o'clock that night, my phone buzzed, and Bryn made the decision for me. I should explain what had happened that day, on their end, because I pieced it together later. Vivian had found out I'd made a fuss about the seating chart. To Vivian, a cleaning lady questioning her placement was an outrage, the help for getting its place. She'd gotten to Bryn that afternoon, I'm sure of it, worked on her, framed my completely reasonable request to sit in the front row at my own daughter's wedding as me, being difficult, making it about myself, threatening to ruin the day over a chair. By the time Bryn picked up her phone that night, she wasn't my daughter anymore. She was a frightened girl who'd been told that the woman who raised her was a problem to be managed, and that her place in the gleaming Whitfield world depended on managing me. So she sent the text. I don't think she even fully felt it as she typed it. I think she was repeating a position that had been installed in her, the way you repeat directions to a place you've never been. But I felt it. Every word. I've thought a lot about why that particular message broke through 8 months of swallowing. I think it's because it combined the 2 things into one sentence, the contempt and the bill. Don't expect to matter. See, yes, I was being used. You can be sidelined or you can be billed. When they do both in the same breath to the same person, that's not a wedding. That's a transaction with a woman they've decided to despise. And I, of all people, know how to handle a transaction. Here is the text, exactly as it came in at 11:04 on a Tuesday night, while I was sitting in my recliner with my aching feet up and the green accordion folder, by pure chance, on the side table where I'd left it after a phone call with Sandra about something else entirely. Mom, Vivian and I talked, and we really need you to drop the seating thing. It's causing so much stress. You can come to the wedding if you still pay, but don't expect a seat up front. The front is for the Whitfield side and important guests. Please just let this go. It's not about you. You can come if you still pay, but don't expect a seat up front. I read it 3 times. I waited for the hurt to take me down, the way it had 100 times that year. But something else came instead. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. It came up through me clean and cool and clarifying, like the first cold water after a long thirst. And it wasn't rage, and it wasn't grief. It was the feeling I get right before I sign a contract I've decided is good. Certainty. I looked at the green folder on the side table, the folder with my name on every single one of those vendor contracts. Cora Thorne, responsible party. The folder Sandra had handed me with the words, always good to know where the door is. I had spent 8 months looking for the door and telling myself I'd never use it. My daughter had just shown me exactly where it was. I set down the phone. I picked up the folder, and for the first time in 8 months, Cora Thorne stopped being a good sport and started being a businesswoman. I opened the folder first, before I answered the 90 days out, and we were exactly 94 days out, meaning a near full refund if the date could be rebooked, and a venue that popular could always rebook a Saturday. The caterer, similar. The florist, the band, the photographer, all of them mine, all of them cancelable, all of them with deposits that came back to me, not to anyone named Whitfield. Every thread of that wedding ran through my signature. Pull me out and there was no wedding, just a date, a dress, and a family with a fading name and, as I was about to discover, empty pockets. Sandra's voice in my head, "Nobody else has the authority to spend a dime of this but you." Then I picked up my phone and I typed my answer to my daughter. I didn't type it in anger. I typed it slowly, the way you write the most important line of a contract, because I wanted every word to be exactly true. "Then I'll keep the 40,000 and you can keep the seat." I read it once. I meant it completely. I hit send. And then, this is the part that matters, the part the title of this whole story turns on. I did not sit there and wait for her to call. I did not stew. I did not draft a follow-up. I have learned, in business, that the time between a decision and the action is the only time your nerve can fail you. So I gave my nerve no time at all. I called Sandra Pham at 11:09 at night. If you've spent your whole life being the one who absorbs it, who pays and smiles and steps to the back so everyone else can be comfortable, who's been taught that loving people means letting them treat you as less, then you know how terrifying and how holy it is. The first time you finally pick up the phone and refuse. If that's you, stay with me right to the end of this, because I promise you, the ground holds. Sandra answered on the fourth ring, sleepy. Morning. I told her about the text. The whole 8 months compressed into 90 seconds. Row 6. Just handle the check. You can come if you still pay. Sandra was quiet for a moment. Then, in a different voice, her business voice, the one I pay for, she said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" "I want out," I said, "all of it. The venue, the caterer, all of them. I'm the responsible party. I want to exercise every cancellation right I have and get back every dollar that's coming to me. And I want it started before I can talk myself out of it." "You understand what that means?" Sandra said. "It means there's no wedding, not at these vendors, not on this date." "I understand exactly what it means," I said. "I've spent 8 months understanding it. They want my $40,000 and they want me in row 6. They can't have both. I'm choosing which one I keep." "All right," Sandra said. I could hear her already sitting up, reaching for a pen. "I'll start making calls at 8 a.m. "No," I said. "Sandra, start tonight." "Tonight?" Sandra said. "Cora, the venue office is closed." "The venue has an emergency event line," I said, because I read the contract and it's in Section 9. The caterer has an after-hours number for the same reason. I want it on the record, time-stamped, tonight, that I, the sole responsible party, am formally beginning cancellation. I want there to be no morning where someone could call my daughter first and spin this before the facts are in. There was a pause, and then Sandra laughed, softly, with what I think was respect. "You really did read every contract." "I read everything before I sign it," I said. "It's the only reason a woman like me ever has anything. Nobody hands us the benefit of the doubt, so we keep it in writing." "Give me an hour," Sandra said. "I'll make the calls I can make tonight and send the formal notices tonight." So devastated. I looked at my rough hands. I thought about row 6. I thought about a slideshow with no picture of me in it. I thought about 18 years of recitals in the back row in my work clothes. "Bryn is going to be devastated either way," I said quietly. "She can be devastated as a girl who learned her mother has limits, or she can stay comfortable as a girl who learned her mother has none. One of those devastations is worth something. Send the notices." "Sending them," Sandra said. "Go to bed, Cora. You did a hard right thing tonight." I didn't go to bed. I sat in my recliner with the green folder in my lap and I waited, because I knew, the way mothers know, that Bryn would call. She did, 1 hour later. Here's what happened in that hour, on the other end, while I sat in my chair. Sandra, God bless her, is thorough and she is fast. She called the venue's emergency line and reached the event manager, a woman named Denise, who, in a twist I'll tell you about later, turned out to know exactly who I was. Sandra identified herself as my attorney, stated that I, Cora Thorne, the sole signatory and responsible party on the contract, was formally invoking the cancellation clause and requested written confirmation of the refund timeline. She sent the email while still on the phone, so it was time-stamped 11:31 p.m. Then she did the same with the caterer's after-hours line. Same with a voicemail and follow-up email to the planner, the one the Whitfields had been treating as their personal staff, the one who'd drawn up that seating chart. So here's the sequence that the title of this whole story turns on. At 11:04, Bryn texted me. At 11:06, I replied. At 11:09, I called Sandra. By 11:35, the venue and the caterer had formal time-stamped notice that the money was being pulled by the only person who'd ever had the planner. The wedding was, in every way that mattered, already over. The $40,000 was already turning around and heading home. She was calling to undo something that was already done. That's what it means, that line in the title. My lawyer had called first, not first as in early. First as in, before my daughter could cry, the truth was already in writing. The phone lit up at 5 past midnight. Bryn. I let it ring twice, not to be cruel, to steady myself. Then I answered, Mom! She was already crying, the words tumbling. Mom, what did you do? The venue. Denise called me. She said you canceled. She said your lawyer called, that the deposit's being refunded and they're releasing the date. Mom, the wedding's in 3 weeks. What did you do? I did exactly what I told you I'd do, sweetheart, I said. My voice was calm. 40 years of staying calm while the monitor screams. You told me I could come if I still paid, but not to expect a seat up front. I told you I'd keep the $40,000 and you could keep the seat. I'm a woman of my word, Bryn. I kept the $40,000. But you can't. Mom, everything's booked. Everyone's invited. Vivian's going to... She was hyperventilating now. Why would you do this to me? And there it was. Why would you do this to me? As if I were the one who'd done something. As if the 8 months, the row 6, the just handle the check, had all been weather, and my one action was the only cruelty in the story. Bryn, I said gently, I want you to hear me because I'm only going to say it once, and then we're both going to get some sleep. I did not do this to you. I declined to do something to myself. I let that sit. I have been treated by people you've chosen as a checkbook with a pulse. And tonight, my own daughter told me in writing that I could pay for her wedding, but not sit at the front of it. So I made a choice. I chose my dignity over their party. I'd have thought you, of all people, would understand why. She didn't understand. Not that night. That night, she was too deep in the Whitfield world to see it, and too frightened of what Vivian would say. You're being selfish, she said, and I could hear that it wasn't really her, it was the script. It's my wedding and you're blowing it up because of your ego, because you didn't get a good enough chair. A good enough chair, I repeated quietly. Bryn, it was the front row, at your wedding. The seat your father should have been in, except he left, so it was just mine. The one seat in that whole room that was actually only mine. Silence. I didn't blow up your wedding over a chair, I said. You and Vivian did when you decided the chair mattered more than the mother. I just stopped paying for the privilege of being told so. She was crying harder now, but the quality of it had changed. There was confusion in it, the first crack in the script, the sound of a young woman beginning to hear herself. Vivian's going to lose her mind, Bryn whispered. She'll never... Mom, the Whitfields can't cover this. 40,000. They don't... Preston told me they don't actually have it. They've been counting on... She stopped, hearing what she was about to say. On me, I finished gently. They've been counting on the cleaning lady, the whole time. That's the part that should make you angriest, sweetheart, if you think it through. They despised me and depended on me at the same time. They wanted me invisible and paying. And the only person in this story who was ever asked to be both invisible and generous was me. She didn't answer. But she didn't hang up either, and that, I knew, was the beginning. That's not just money, Bryn. That's 11 years of overtime. That's the down payment on a house I never bought because I was paying your tuition $100 at a time. That's me cleaning a law firm's bathrooms at 5 in the morning so I could be at your school by 9 for the things that mattered. Every dollar of that $40,000 came out of these hands. I looked at them. The hands Vivian shook like she might catch something. I heard her breath hitch. I offered it gladly, I said. I wanted to give you a beautiful day. There is nothing I wouldn't give you, Bryn. But there's a difference between giving and being taken from. Giving is when someone receives your gift and sees you. Being taken from is when they want your hand open but your face turned away. I have spent my whole life letting people take from these hands. I decided tonight I'm done letting them do it to my heart. Mom, her voice broke. I love you more than my own life, I said. I have since the second they put you in my arms in a hospital I was still paying off when you graduated college. That has never changed, and it never will. But I won't fund my own humiliation, not even for you, especially not for you. Because someday you're going to be a mother, and I need you to know what one looks like when she finally stands up. She was crying, but she wasn't arguing anymore. Go to sleep, sweetheart, I said. We'll talk when the Whitfields aren't in your ear. Vivian called me at 8 the next morning. I let it go to voicemail because I had a company to run and crews to dispatch, and because some calls you take on your own schedule. The voicemail was a masterpiece. It started gracious. Cora, dear, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding, and curdled over 90 seconds into something with its claws out. By the end, she was informing me that I was behaving like exactly the sort of person reinstate everything immediately, as if I were an employee who'd gone rogue, as if the $40,000 of mine were somehow hers to command. I called her back at noon between job sites, sitting in my van in a parking lot in my work clothes. I want you to picture that because the contrast is the whole point. Vivian in her sitting room with the roof she couldn't afford to fix. Me in a cleaning van that I owned outright, 60 people on my payroll, a green folder of contracts on the passenger seat, every one of them signed by me. Vivian, I said, I got your message. Cora, thank goodness. Now you'll fix this today and we'll all... No, I said. I found that word does more work than any speech. No, just the one syllable, calm, in a parking lot, from the cleaning lady. The silence on the other end was the sound of a woman realizing, for the first time, that the help she'd despised was holding the only checkbook in the room, and had just closed it. What did you say to me? Vivian breathed. I said no, I said. Shall I explain it, or shall I let my lawyer? What followed over the next few days was the most educational week of my daughter's life. Because once my $40,000 walked out of the room, the Whitfields had to do the one thing they'd been avoiding for 3 generations. Look at their own bank account. Preston, it turned out, made a decent salary but had no savings. He'd been raised to spend like a Whitfield on an income that wasn't one. Gerald's business interests were mostly debts wearing nice suits. And Vivian, the grand Vivian, had been quietly selling off jewelry for years to keep up the house. The grand wedding the Whitfields had been planning to host had never been theirs to host. It was mine. It had always been mine. They'd simply gotten so used to my money that they'd started believing it was a Whitfield resource. The senator, the front rows for people who mattered, sat exposed as what it had always been, a poor family's pride, propped up by a cleaning lady's checkbook. Bryn saw all of it. That's the thing. With my money out of the room, the Whitfields had nothing left to perform with, and the performance was all there'd ever been. She watched Vivian rage and scramble and beg. She watched Preston. And this is the part that broke her, I think. She watched Preston side with his mother. Not once in that whole terrible week did Preston call me or stand up to Vivian or put his arm around my daughter and say, "My mother was wrong about yours." He just got quieter, the way the weak do, the way I'd watched Bryn herself get quiet for months. Except now she was watching someone do it to her. Bryn came to my house that Saturday, alone. No Preston, no Vivian, no script. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped her with homework while my work clothes soaked in the sink. And she looked at my hands, and she started to cry. And this time, it was the real kind, the kind without anyone watching to perform for. "I introduced you as facilities," she said. "At the engagement dinner, I heard myself do it, and I let it happen. I let all of it happen. The photos, the lobby at the dress fitting. I knew, Mom. I knew it was wrong every time, and I let it happen because I wanted them to think I was, I don't even know, better than where I came from." "I know, baby," I said. "I watched you want it. I understood it. I grew up poor, too. The wanting out is the most human thing there is." "You should hate me," she said. "I told you to pay and sit in the back. Who does that? Who says that to their own mother?" She put her face in her hands. "I watched Preston not defend me all week," she said, muffled. "His mother said horrible things about you, and he just sat there. And I thought, that's me. That's what I've been doing to you, sitting there. And now you know how it feels," I said gently. "That's not nothing, Bryn. That's the most expensive lesson I ever bought you, and worth every penny I didn't spend." The confrontation came whether I wanted it or not, because people like Vivian cannot leave a closed door closed. She needs the last word the way she needs the name. She arrived at my house that next week, unannounced, with Preston trailing behind her like a man walking to his own scolding. I let them in, because I'm not afraid of people in my own kitchen, and because Bryn was there. And I wanted my daughter to watch this with her own eyes. Vivian swept in like she was inspecting a property she might condescend to buy. She took in my modest kitchen, my linoleum, the work boots by the door, and I watched her file all of it under beneath me. "Cora," she said, settling at my table uninvited, "we're going to sort this out like adults. You've made your little point. Everyone's very impressed by your independence." A thin smile. "Now, you'll restore the funding. We'll find you a perfectly nice seat, perhaps not the very front, but somewhere dignified. And we'll put this unpleasantness behind us. The invitations are already out. The Whitfield name is on the line. The Whitfield name. Always the name." I poured 3 cups of coffee, set them down, and sat across from her, with my rough hands wrapped around my own cup. "Vivian," I said, "let me make sure I understand your offer. You'd like me to pay $40,000. And in exchange, I may sit somewhere dignified, but not the front." I took a sip. "Have I got that right?" "That's a more than reasonable." "It's the same offer," I said. Bryn got to see it bare. "Do you have any idea," Vivian said, her voice rising, "what it has been like for our family to absorb this marriage? To explain to people that Preston is marrying the daughter of a woman who scrubs floors? We have given your daughter a name, access, a future. The very least you could do is fund the celebration quietly and let the people who actually understand society handle it. And instead, you throw a tantrum over a chair, like exactly the kind of common grasping." "Careful," I said, quiet. But something in it stopped her. "Common," I said. "Say the word, Vivian. You've been swallowing it for 8 months. Common, grasping. The cleaning lady who forgot her place." I set down my cup. "Here's what's interesting. In this entire arrangement, only one family has been grasping at the other's money, and it wasn't mine. I never asked you for a dime. You needed $40,000 from me to throw a party you couldn't afford so that you could feel like the somebody your bank account says you're not anymore." Vivian went white, then red. "That's a lie," she hissed. "Is it?" I said. "Preston, look at your mother and tell me the Whitfields can write a $40,000 check today. Go on, tell me, and I'll apologize and put the money back this afternoon." Preston looked at the table. He didn't say a word. The silence said all of it. And Bryn watched her fiancé sit in silence while his mother called her mother common. And I saw, on my daughter's face, the exact moment the gleaming Whitfield world lost its shine for good. I reached over to the counter and I picked up the green folder. I set it on the table between us, and I opened it, and I laid the contracts out one at a time, the way you lay out cards when the hand is signature line on any of them. She didn't move, so I read it for her. Cora Thorne, Cora Thorne, Cora Thorne. Everyone. Not Whitfield, not Bryn, not Preston. Mine. I'm the responsible party on all of it because I am a businesswoman, and a businesswoman does not hand frightened, grasping people $40,000 and trust them to be kind. I squared the stack. You spent 8 months treating me like a checkbook, but you never once read the checkbook. If you had, you'd have seen that the cleaning lady held the only authority in the entire wedding. I could have taken your front rows and your senator and your crested invitations off the board any day I chose. I just hoped, right up until Tuesday night, that I wouldn't have to. Vivian stared at the contracts with her name nowhere on them. You told my daughter to tell me, I said, that I should just handle the check and let the people who matter handle what matters. I looked at her. So that's exactly what I did. I handled the check. I took it back. Now you handle what matters. The venue, the caterer, the guests, the senator. Without it. I closed the folder. Let me know how that goes. Vivian stood up so fast her chair scraped. She was shaking, not with sorrow, with the specific fury of a person who has just discovered the floor was never theirs. You will regret this, she said. You have humiliated us. Do you understand what people will say? That the Whitfield wedding fell apart because the bride's mother, the cleaning woman, threw away $40,000 rather than sit in row 6. I finished, calm. Yes, that's exactly what people will say, and every working person who hears it will understand me completely. You should worry less about what people will say. You can't have one without the other anymore. Those days are over. And the seat, she spat, grasping for the wound. You did all this, destroyed your own daughter's wedding over a seat? I looked at her, and then I said the thing I'd been carrying since 11:04 on Tuesday night. You keep the front seats, I said. All of them. The senator, the cousins, the people who matter. Keep every chair in the room. I'll keep my $40,000 and my dignity. I held up my rough, swollen, beautiful hands. And do you know the strangest thing, Vivian? They cost me exactly the same. 40 years of these hands bought both the money and the dignity. I'm not going to spend one to lose the other. Not for you. Not for a chair. Not even for my own daughter. And from across the kitchen, in a small, clear, changed voice, my daughter said, She's right. The room turned to Bryn. She was standing by the counter where she'd been silent the whole time, watching. And something in her had finished changing. I'd watched it happen all week, but now it was done, and her spine was in it. She's right, Vivian, Bryn said again, steadier, and I'm ashamed it took me this long to say it. She looked at Preston. All week I waited for you to defend her, or me, or anything, and you just sat there. The way I sat there for 8 months while your mother treated mine like staff. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. I almost became you, both of you. I sent my own mother a text telling her to pay for my wedding and sit in the back. My mother, who cleaned offices at dawn so she could be at my recitals. Bryn, Vivian warned, think very carefully about... I am thinking carefully, Bryn said, for the first time in a year. She walked across. I'd rather have row 6 next to my mother than the whole front row next to people who'd put her there. Vivian's mouth opened and closed. Preston stared at the floor. I think you should both go, Bryn said quietly. And Preston, don't call me tonight. I need to think about whether I want to marry a man who watched his mother do this and said nothing. I already know one woman who'd never sit silent while someone she loved was disrespected. She squeezed my hand. I'm related to her. I forgot that for a while. They left. They didn't slam the door. People like that never do. But it was the last time Vivian Whitfield ever sat at my table. Here's how it shook out in the months after, because I know you want the ledger and not just the feeling. I've always believed in a clean ledger. The $40,000 came back. most of it within a few weeks. Denise rebooked that Saturday inside of a month, so the venue refunded the deposit in full, and the other vendors followed, minus a few small, fair fees Sandra negotiated down. Cora Thorne, responsible party, got her money home where it had been earned. The grand Whitfield wedding never happened. There was no version of it the Whitfields could pay for themselves, which is the entire truth of the Whitfields, in one sentence. The crested invitations went in a drawer. The senator went to someone else's party, and the engagement ended, not in a blow-up, in a fade, which is how the week end things. Preston never did call to defend Bryn or me or himself. He let his mother do his thinking, and Bryn watched him do it, and a few weeks later she gave the ring back. I kept waiting for him to become a man who'd stand up, she told me, and I realized I was watching a documentary about my own life. I didn't want to marry the thing I was trying to stop being. Vivian told everyone who'd listened that the cleaning woman had been and exactly whose side they're on. You don't get to spend 40 years cleaning a community's offices without that community knowing precisely who the grasping one was. It wasn't me. It was never me. Bryn moved back near me for a while after, out of the Whitfield orbit entirely. She took a breath she'd been holding for a year. And I'll tell you what I did with the $40,000 because it's the best part, and because it's what Bryn's father never understood about money and Vivian never will. I gave it to my daughter, all of it, but not for a party. I put it toward the down payment on a little house. Her house, in her name, with her on the deed and the mortgage, a place that no mother-in-law could ever seat her in row 6 of, because it was hers. The money I'd have spent on one beautiful afternoon of being treated like the help, I spent instead on giving my daughter the one thing I never had at her age, a door of her own that locked in a home nobody could take. "You should keep it, Mom," she said when I told her. "You earned it. You earned it on your knees." "I did earn it on my knees," I said, "and there's no one on earth I'd rather get up off my knees for than you. That's what the money was always for, baby, not a wedding. You. It just took us both a long road to remember it." She cried. I cried. We're criers, the Thorne women, but only when it's real. She hung a little framed thing in that house's entryway. It's a photo of my hands. She took it herself, the swollen knuckles, the callus on the thumb. Underneath it, she wrote, "These built everything." They did. They surely did. Bryn and I are closer now than we've been since she was small. The Whitfield year was a sickness she had to come through, and she came through it. And on the other side, she's more herself than she ever was when she was trying to be one of them. She works with me now a little, helps with the marketing for Thorne Commercial, a vendor. Yes, my mother's the owner. She built it from one mop. You'll want to read your contract carefully. She does. And she winked at me across the office. She'll get married someday, I think, to someone who'd walk her mother to the front row without being asked. And when she does, I'll pay for it again, gladly, with these same hands, because the money was never the problem. The money was always a gift. It only became a weapon when they tried to separate the gift from the giver. "I'm sorry I ever made you feel like a checkbook," she told me once recently. "You didn't in the end," I said. "In the end, you took my hand in front of the people you were scared of. That's the only seat at any table I ever wanted, Bryn. Right next to you. Not in front, next to." I ran into Vivian once months later at the grocery store. She was in line with a small basket, and she saw me, and for a second the old reflex crossed her face. The little flinch of someone deciding whether to acknowledge the help. Then she remembered, I think, how it had all turned out, who'd held the contract, whose daughter had chosen whom, and she gave me a small, tight nod, and she looked away first. I didn't gloat. There's no satisfaction in it, finally. Vivian is a frightened woman guarding an empty name, and that's a harder life than mine for all her heirs. I have 60 employees who count on me, a daughter who took my hand, and a company built by these two ruined, beautiful hands. Vivian has a roof she can't fix, and a son who won't grow up. I'd rather be the cleaning lady. I've always rather been the cleaning lady. It's the truest thing I ever was. I nodded back at her, polite, and I went on with my shopping. I had a house to help my daughter furnish, the good kind of spending, the kind where the gift and the giver get to stay in the same room. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. Kicking is what they count on. Talking is how they keep you in row 6. They let you talk forever, as long as you keep paying and never act. I don't regret a single thing. Not the text I sent, not the call to Sandra at 11 at night, not the contracts I'd quietly signed in my own name a year before I ever needed them. Because the lesson my daughter learned that month, about who she was and who she came from and what a woman with self-respect actually does when she's disrespected, that lesson was worth more than any wedding. You can't buy it. You can only show it. And I showed it with the only thing I've ever had to teach with. Not a name, not old money, just 2 hard hands, a green folder of contracts, and the word no. If there's one thing I'd hand you from all of this, it's this. Your generosity is a gift, not a tax. The day someone tries to keep your open hand and turn away your face, the day they want what you give but not who you are, that's the day your kindness has been turned into a leash. Set it down. Love people with everything you have. Give until it feels good, but never, ever pay for the privilege of being treated as less. Keep your dignity and your generosity in the same hand. They cost you the same to earn. Don't let anyone make you spend one to keep the other. That's my story. 1 text, 1 call to my lawyer, and $40,000 that came home. If it reminded you that your worth was never up for a vote, take that as a sign. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.